Let's dive into a simple but really powerful idea: how to become more aware of all the invisible things that make our lives work. And the best way to get started is actually with a little story about two young fish. So, this story comes from the writer David Foster Wallace. And it goes like this. There are these two young fish just swimming along, doing their thing in the only world they've ever known. And then an older, kind of wiser fish swims by from the other direction. He gives him a little nod and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" Seems pretty simple, right? Just a friendly hello. Well, the two young fish just keep on swimming. They don't think much of it at first. But that question from the older fish, it just kind of hangs there in the water. And after a minute, one of them turns to the other, totally confused, and he asks, "What the hell is water?" And boom! There it is. That's the punchline. And it's the entire point of the story. The most obvious, the most essential, the most constant thing in their lives is completely invisible to them. So this, of course, raises a huge question for us. If the fish don't know they're in water, what are we oblivious to? What's the water that we're all swimming in every single day without even realizing it? And that's exactly how this story applies to our own lives. Our water is all that essential stuff that's so fundamental, so constant, that we just don't even notice it's there. I mean, really think about it. When was the last time you consciously thought, "Wow, this air I'm breathing is amazing," or considered the genius design of the chair you're sitting on, or the incredible tools that make something like this possible? That stuff, that's our water. And here's the thing, our default setting is to be totally blind to the very things that keep us going. Now, this isn't some kind of personal flaw. It's just how our brains are wired. The real trick is consciously choosing to wake up and see it. Okay, so recognizing that we're kind of blind to our own water is the first step. That's huge. But what can we actually do about it? Well, thankfully, there's a surprisingly simple way to start gaining that awareness. You've definitely seen this idea everywhere, right? The explosion of mindfulness, meditation apps, the whole conversation about self-awareness. It's all pointing to this deep collective desire to break free from just living on autopilot. And among all the different techniques out there, one really stands out because it's so simple. It doesn't require any fancy mantras or sitting still for hours. It's just the powerful, common sense ability to slow down and do things deliberately, on purpose. So here's how it works. When you force yourself to describe what you're doing as you're doing it, you create this tiny little gap between an impulse and your action. And in that little space, that's where the magic happens. That's where you find the opportunity for real introspection and awareness. All right, let's get practical. How do you actually do this? I'm going to walk you through a wonderfully simple strategy you can try literally the moment we're done here. So it's just 5 simple steps. First, pick a totally mundane, everyday task. Second, you gotta consciously slow way down. Third, you're going to narrate every single movement out loud. Fourth, and this part is key, get absurdly, ridiculously specific with your descriptions. And then finally, you just step back and reflect on what just happened. And when I say everyday task, I mean anything. Seriously, try it the next time you're checking your phone or when you're loading the dishwasher. These are the things we do on complete autopilot, which makes them the perfect training ground for building awareness. Now let's really zoom in on step 4, getting specific. The whole goal here is to push way past your first simple description. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you think you're being too detailed, you're probably just getting started. You literally can't be too detailed with this. So, for example, instead of just saying, "I am picking up my coffee cup," you could try narrating the tiny little sensations. Okay, my fingers are curling, they're feeling the warmth of the ceramic. Now my bicep is tensing as I lift. I can feel my weight shifting to my left foot. My breath is kind of catching in my chest. That is the level of detail we're shooting for. And that brings us to the final step, reflection. After you've narrated the whole task, just ask yourself this one simple question. What did I notice that I have never noticed before? What part of my water just became visible to me? So why bother, right? Why go through all this trouble to narrate loading the dishwasher like you're a sports commentator? Because this simple practice, it isn't really about the dishes. It's about something so much bigger. This is the ultimate goal. This whole exercise isn't just about noticing more stuff. It's about understanding yourself and your world on a much, much deeper level. Every new layer of awareness you uncover is a direct path to personal insight. This is how we learn to see the water. So I'll leave you with a final thought, and maybe a little challenge. Your world is absolutely full of invisible things just waiting for you to notice them. Now that you have this tool, the only question is, what taken-for-granted element of your world are you going to uncover first?